Welcome to the Prime Venture Partners podcast. This is your host, Amit Somani, and I am delighted to have with me former friend, colleague, and now a successful entrepreneur, Prashant Tandon. Prashant, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, Amit.
Prashant, I know I was just looking you up. You relocated back to India in 2009, and I came a couple of years earlier to you in 2007. And at
Mhm.
that time, many of us came back actually for professional reasons because it looked like India was about to take off. And finally, 15 years later, it's happening in a big way. So maybe just tell us a little bit about your journey of why you came back to India and how the journey's been.
Okay, so the itch to come back actually started around 2007. That's when I graduated from business school and wanted to do something in India. And yes, you're right. India was booming. India was looking exciting, and but I did not know what to do if I were to start up. So I parked myself at McKinsey for a couple of years in San Francisco, and thought maybe with time I'll understand better what I should do if I should do when I decide to jump in. Over those 2 years, got a good exposure to healthcare in the US and also met Samir, who was my co-founder. And that's very important, having somebody who's willing to jump along with you into this chaos. Once those things, a lot of things have to come together. So you have to have an idea of what you want to do, start up where, how, with whom, which city, which sector, the tech. So a lot of things have to fall in place, which thankfully they did in 2009 for us. And it was clearly India was the land of opportunity. US was just coming out of the economic crisis, and it was still a little bit of a downer there, and it was everything upbeat here, kind of what it is like right now as well, it seems. So thought, what are we doing? And a lot of my friends in the US, actually Americans, moved to India to do their own startups around that time. And I was like, am I wasting my time just being away from where the action is? I should be where I should be. So back I came.
Wonderful. For those, like you said, there are a lot of parallels between those times and now. For somebody listening into the podcast now that is contemplating coming back to India, and the other trend that I noticed, although you said you came back a couple of years after grad school, I came back after 14 years in the US. So I was there for a very long time. A lot of people are now just doing their grad school or something and coming back right away. So, what recommendations or thoughts would you have for people that are just going to the US maybe to learn something or to be a part of that ecosystem and then come back?
See, there's no cookie cutter recommendation, to be honest. You come back and you jump in when you're ready, and that ready is different for different people. So it should not be कि अरे मैं आया नहीं immediately. So is that a problem? या फिर uh, it's been 10 years, 15 years, that is a problem. I would say there is clearly a lot happening here. So, but there is always a lot to learn outside as well. So you have to do your own personal trade-offs. There's an opportunity cost of everything. There is an opportunity to learn everywhere. But this is a journey, the entrepreneurial journey. The most important thing is that from a personal mindset perspective, you should be just feeling ready for it. And whenever it is, it can be day zero. You don't need to go out at all for that matter. If you are clear
That's
from
right.
today, then why go to business school? If you are still figuring out and trying to understand your place in the world and your philosophy for your life and all of that, take your time. यहाँ पे वहाँ पे opportunity is everywhere and you learn everywhere. So I think for me, those 2 years were great. I learned quite a lot. I spent it's personal development, it's professional development, and then I felt it was actually time to move back. So take your calls.
Absolutely. So now let's talk a little bit about healthcare, the sector that you chose. Like you said, I didn't realize you were doing healthcare at McKinsey. Honestly and candidly, right? How has that evolution of that sector be, particularly from the point of view that you're a tech entrepreneur, in terms of adoption of tech, both from the consumer side, from the government regulatory side, as well as this? Has it been, too slow, reasonably paced? What do you think, right, in terms of how long it has taken for since your first venture?
The interesting thing about healthcare is that it's never fast. It moves at a glacial speed. What we thought that we had come to build in 2009 is what we are building now also, and hoping a lot of that will fructify in the years to come. But two, three important things. I think one, from first principles, whatever we believed will or should happen actually happened. But it just, we thought it'll happen in 2 years. It's been 15 years, and it's now unfolding as we speak. So it's a game of patience. It's a game of just chipping away and kind of making sure you are solving the issues of today while preparing the company or the model for what will be the future model for healthcare tomorrow. So, and that's both exciting and sometimes irritating or frustrating, that not everything that you know that you want to build is it's the right time to build, and the wait is sometimes quite a bit for you. So you have to find what are the current problems to solve to keep yourself actively in play, that you are building out things that are solving today's problems and laying the foundation for tomorrow. So दोनों चीजों में हेल्थ कार्ड में आई थिंक हेल्थ केयर में a lot of times the problem is that people build out a model for the future, and that future is not the 1 year horizon, 2 year horizon. It turns out to be a 10-year horizon, and not many entrepreneurs have the wherewithal to go through with it. So solve the here and now problem and keep a view on what you're solving for the longer term. And then,
So,
but it
so can
happens. The
you
good news is, for us at least, the good news was it happened. Whatever we envisaged, a lot of it has happened and more is unfolding.
give us an example of what you had envisaged back then, and you thought it
Yeah,
will happen in 2, 3, 5 years, and now it has taken 10 years or 12 years and it has happened? Number one. And a
yeah,
related question: what are you envisaging in healthcare specifically, looking 10 years out, right? What do you think will happen from
yeah.
now that you have the benefit of the last 12 years?
I think when we started with a doctor-centric platform, and the idea was we are digitizing the healthcare ecosystem. And once we have the clinic, the platform inside a doctor's clinic, then we'll kind of get the entire ecosystem digitized from there, and all the benefits will accrue, etc., etc. And the first thing we realized after spending a year and a half at it was that this industry will move from a doctor centric to a patient centric ecosystem. Now, seems very basic, seems very straightforward, and in FMCG and consumer everything, customer centricity or consumer centricity is kind of well known. But when we would talk about patient centricity in healthcare, people thought it was coming out of, not out of knowledge and insight, but it was just us being naive and not knowing what the reality of the market is, that healthcare can never be patient centric. It will always be doctor centric or payer centric, which is insurance centric, depending on which country you operate in. And that was the completely confident belief of the entire ecosystem. So go to a pharma company, go to an insurance company, go to a provider network. All the big players will tell you that okay, it's all matlab, patient centricity. Healthcare doesn't work this way. So this was, we were told that by investors, of course, and everyone else. But we believe that the market will move to that. And today, every single pharma company, every single hospital, every single healthcare institution talks of patient centricity as the most important thing they are focusing on. So, which sounds very basic today, but at that time was a big thing. Another thing I'll tell you, when we started 1MG, I was very clear that we want to build an integrated healthcare platform, which is the information, pharmacy, diagnostics, consultations all together for the patient on one platform. And it came from a belief that that's how healthcare will be delivered better. And the digital platforms will have the data interplay and patient context going. So that will be the way you can actually give better outcomes in the future. So again, all investors and all our competitors also were very clear that you should pick either be a pharmacy or be a lab or be a telemedicine platform. And call it being stubborn or whatever, but we decided from the get go that we want all of it. And we want to create a model because we saw ourselves more as a healthcare platform than a commerce platform. Commerce was an enabler to deliver healthcare for us. It's just how you view yourself. Now, again, 5 years, 7 years out, every single platform that is selling healthcare for whatever reasons, call it cross sell or margin expansion or whatever, but every platform is integrated with all the services coming together. Now, 10 years out, what do I see? At least my view is consistent from where it was when we started off, that now the building blocks have been built. The plumbing has been done. The e-pharmacy, e-consultation, e-diagnostics, all that foundational stuff is there. All the services have come together. Now we'll get into much more life cycle personalized and predictive care, because the data interplay between all the services and longitudinal information of patients will become possible. So where are we headed? More, I would say, healthcare than disease care, as they call it, that it's your management over a period of time, what trajectory that you are on, your diabetes and heart problems and hypertension and whatever, you're going on a certain trajectory. A million people in your situation went from on a similar trajectory, and then some went up, some went down, some went sideways, depending on specific interventions. That's where we come in with the nudges at the right time. So what will happen is healthcare will become much, much more predictive, personalized, and preventative, and it'll be a life cycle care model of delivery. So that's what I am fairly excited about, that it will become like that, like, as against what it is right now, which is same for everyone in very, very broad cohorts. And what is going to make it possible is data, which has always been scarce till today. But the foundation is very strong, and the government is also now, I would say, boosting it with the NHA and the other good stuff that's going on.
So I had a business related question, right, on this integrated healthcare notion, and multiple players, each providing like a full stack, right? I'll give you diagnostics, I'll give you consultation, I'll give you content nudges, I'll give you whatever else, right? How much of that is a manifestation? It was your vision, but when I look at the industry, of the
Yeah,
fact that still acquiring consumers is very expensive,
yeah,
and healthcare by nature of it, obviously you're not, unless you're a chronic patient, you're not going to the doctor every day or every month,
yeah,
and
yeah,
therefore you have to keep acquiring, reacquiring, and therefore this is like a necessity is the mother of invention. Say, look, once I get the customer, let me make sure I can truly serve them over a genuine lifetime.
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
pun intended, because otherwise I have to keep acquiring and making money on the first transaction. It just won't make sense.
Yeah.
So how much of it is a necessity as opposed to, I mean, it is obviously good from a consumer
No,
point
it
of
is.
view
It is.
also.
It is. Absolutely, it is, and that's where it is perfect. That you anyway have to do it, whether you believe it or your reason to do it may be different. You're absolutely right. Even if I were seeing myself only as a commerce shop, I would still want to do more cross sell. That's what I mentioned when
Yes,
I said that fundamentally everybody today is doing it because it makes business or commercial sense. Having said that, what also ends up, at least in my experience or my view, is the conviction of what you are building and the philosophy behind it. And in my case, that philosophy was very clear key. If we are going to build the healthcare platform of the future, I need all these services coming together for the patient and over a long period of time. So it makes business sense, is a absolutely positive cherry on the cake, but it everyone would end up here was fairly obvious because of reasons you mentioned, and because of reasons I am going after as well.
understood. Now, switching to the patient side, right, or the consumer, how has that behavior evolved or changed in general, right? Because, for example, it is notoriously kind of known that Indians will much rather do, curative healthcare than preventive. Probably true for all human beings, but even more so for India. कि समोसा कचौरी खा लेंगे बाद में bypass surgery तो हो ही जाएगी, right? But as opposed to doing that, that is one. Second is this notion from a consumer point of view of the attach. Is that happening? Are they sticking around, whether it is on 1 mg or what you see in the
Yeah.
landscape, that, or is it that I am a very, every time I want to go look at something, I'll look at either best of breed or do a Google search or ask my friend, यार ये करवाना है, तो where should I go for it?
Yeah, no, so I think first of all, the Indian consumer is not a homogeneous single type of consumer. So it's a very, like, for every offering you'll find some consumers or the other. But the mega shift or the macro shift, I think, is that consumers are getting more involved in their healthcare, and they are getting more skeptical with the healthcare that they get also. And both of these have been consistent trends. And if you know, 20, 30, 40 years back, it was very clear doctor was on a pedestal and doctor Bhagwan hota hai. Now, from there, it has shifted to most of the consumers and patients feel ki they are all getting kickbacks and this, that, and not acting in their interest. And there's a lot of skepticism that has come in where the patients are all over Google trying to reassure that jo ho raha hai is the right thing or not. And I think with that, what that has meant is that the patients have started asking a lot more questions and started informing or educating themselves a lot more because they don't trust that the system is working for them. And while it's a mixed bag of which part of it is healthy versus dangerous, but I think the fact is that patients are more involved in their healthcare. Number one. Number two, post COVID, the awareness level and the kind of flexibility or desire to try out preventative in bigger ways is actually increased quite a bit. People are much more receptive because a lot of people saw mortality up close. And I think that does have an impact. And so people are getting into more and more. And I think that the question you asked is now, what is the attach of a consumer kind of a thing? I think one, nobody owns a consumer. At the end of the day, the consumer has multiple choices. At best, you can hope to be in a first amongst equals for a bunch of services that you provide for that consumer. But I think it's very heartening for us, at least, that we have a subscription plan called the 1mg Care Plan, where you sign up for 6 months, you pay some 289, 279, something like that. As of now, around 5 lakh people are on that subscription plan. So they are willing to sign up for a 6 month pay upfront a little bit and be attached to our platform. So to me, that is very heartening. It's probably the largest subscription plan in healthcare in the country today. Um, and I think the mindset or the market is moving. Earlier, it was almost impossible to get people to buy into subscription plans of anything. Now, uh, whether OTT, whether a few other services, whether Amazon Prime, whatever has played a role, but people are now, once they are comfortable, they are willing to stick, assuming they are getting what they are getting. So I think the market is changed, and now we will see much more of, because see, life cycle healthcare will not happen till you have people attached, and that's why our view was first we'll get a subscription plan going, which is just better value for what you get in terms of economic value, and then we'll come in with the nudges to make it better outcomes and things like that. And that's another example of what I was saying earlier. Ki a lot of people just go for to the future. Ki we'll create the next generation disease management model of how to manage diabetes better, how to manage cancer better, how to manage this better, that better. Problem is it's very hard to get consumers to stick with you for a period of time and get those outcomes going. So we thought first we'll build stickiness, then we'll build nudges, then we'll show outcomes, then we'll charge for those outcomes. And of course, we are anyway making money if people are sticking. So.
Understood. Understood. You mentioned, Prashant, that there are different kinds of consumers in India. Of course, we know India is not one country; it's like 10 countries. Can you elaborate a little bit, maybe with some of the more unusual ones, right? Like some segments, meaningfully sized segments that you have seen.
Yeah, no, so I think if you look at the top end of the customer base, people have huge spending power and desire to spend as long as they see value in it, and that they are willing to pay up for premium services. And at least in healthcare, we are seeing a lot of labs, a lot of service providers, even in diabetes, people are, or nutrition, people are paying a few lakhs a month, a year, sorry, for their nutritionists, for their diabetes counselors, etc., etc. Those who can pay, and these are kind of Western market economics, and it will be certainly you are restricting yourself to serving the a percentage of the couple of million at the top of the pyramid kind of people. Then there is the at the bottom is the entire spectrum where affordability is everything, and that's where generics and price of a medicine or treatment decides whether a patient goes through treatment or does not at all. And that's where having the right generic options and cheaper solutions mean everything to that patient base. So that's unfortunately a very large segment of our population even today. And then there's a big middle class out there which is aspirational, which wants the bigger brands and the best deal they can get in it. So I think what we are seeing is across these spectrums, offerings have come up. So whether it is a diet counseling plan or a nutrition plan or a diabetes plan costing a few lakhs, or people who are not willing to spend 200, 400 rupees on their managing their diabetes and cholesterol, and even through generics. So spectrum is insane, and that's where I think the government has an important role to play in healthcare, at least at the bottom of the pyramid. The top kind of takes care of itself.
Wonderful. One last question on the healthcare business side, and then we'll jump to entrepreneurship and your journey there. Which is you? I saw you in some quote or maybe on Twitter say something that look, you're going multi-channel, omni-channel. Is it possible to build a digital-only kind of healthcare company going forward? What you had to do, you had to do, and you're at a certain scale. Or is it that India is inherently going to need to be omni-channel? Of course, delivery, there is a clear element of delivery of healthcare that has to be in a physical location. But just for a new age tech company, is it possible to go digital only, or pretty much every
No,
company will have?
I think you can go digital only. I don't think going offline is a imperative. We are going offline is true. We are going omni-channel, multi-channel, but that's also, I think, at this stage, we have the luxury to have the aspiration to be the largest healthcare company of the country. And the fact is that today, around 3 to 4% of healthcare is in the entire digital of outpatient healthcare, e-pharmacy, e-diagnostic. We're talking 3 to 4% at max of the market. So if you want to be a major player of out of the 100%, that 3%, even though it is going to double every year for the next few years, probably, or grow at 50, 60% at least, still, it doesn't get you to the dominant market share positioning. So, and the omni channel is very real in healthcare, especially for the kind of services we provide. Is it required in every healthcare delivery or every healthcare platform? Not really. I think a lot of things can be purely digital. A lot of things will be largely digital, data science based, etc., etc. But and we would, if, if I were to even do it all over again, I think I would focus purely on digital for the first 5 years again. So it's just you need to get to a stage where the additional channels start blending in with the online, creating a model that is truly at least a little omni-channel, and also you start looking for new channels to access consumers. So a big area, I would say, if you can, digital is still at the early stage the most appropriate way to reach out to a consumer.
Understood. Switching gear more now to the entrepreneurial part of your journey, in the sense of how have you grown as an entrepreneur? You mentioned the role of a co-founder is very important. Maybe some of the lessons learned that you would want to pay it forward to folks listening in.
Sure. So I think, firstly, I think it's very important to have a philosophy of what you are building and what value it adds. As I said earlier, also, don't do it for the excitement of or feeling a necessity to be an entrepreneur kind of a thing. And be very clear what's your reason or what will be your reason to exist in the world out there or the marketplace. What view are you carrying? That actually turns out to be very important in the long run. The other very, very important point I would say is that there is immense power in compounding, and you have to keep getting better every day. And when you have the luxury to look back 3 years, 4 years, 5 years from where you were, where you've come, it's all the little things all along the way every day. It's put your head down and keep just getting better at whatever you are doing in the direction that you want to go. that part, I think there's a need for a lot of patience to let anything good takes 7, 8, 9 years to even start looking like something is coming together. And it takes that much time. You have to have that wherewithal and patience. Thirdly, I would say it's a it's a marathon and it's a very turbulent journey. Keeps going up and down. You need your support system in place, and having the right co-founder, having the right core team, having the right family systems, having friends, having a way to maintain your sanity, all of these are absolutely critical. So it's very important to focus on your own sense of mental well-being along this way, because there will be big highs, big lows, and that's the nature of the beast. But at some level you have to just detach a little from the hype and stay grounded on what you need to do. And most of it at many points will not be in your control. So and that's my next important fourth point, which is try to have as good a sense of what you can and what you cannot control. What you can, put your everything in it. What you cannot, just let it go. And mostly, a lot of us as humans, make the mistake of doing the opposite. We obsess and fret and worry about things that we actually have absolutely no control over, and don't spend enough time on what we can actually influence. So we cannot control the markets will go up or down. We can control whether we grow fast or not. Whether we can control whether our burn is in a certain line or not. We can't control if the regulatory landscape is going to completely get changed on its head one fine day. हो गया तो हो गया. मतलब you are obsessing over it won't change. You have fundraise, no investor available, and you being paranoid about it, and your panic showing to your team and your customers and everyone else is not going to help anybody. And it's not like that panic will solve the problem. So panic about or obsess about what you can actually influence, and just let go everything else. You can't control everything, and outcome is actually not in your control at the end. So I think these are some of the things I would just say. Yeah,
Yep.
it's a continuous learning, and I think that's the other thing. You always need to accept with humility that you are getting irrelevant very soon unless you level up repeatedly all the time. So have that understanding that this is a world where it's changing so fast that even if you were the master of what you were doing, whatever you are doing will probably be irrelevant in 5 years. So keep picking up something, some new skills to stay relevant to people around you.
Wonderful. I think you covered a lot of good stuff there. So I don't have any follow on to that. I will just ask one last question before we wrap up here, which is what advice did you get along the way, right, without attribution, or what is popular folklore that you totally would debunk, saying this is crap, like don't worry about it. You gave a lot of positive things of what to do, what
Huh.
not to do based on what you would hear or have experienced.
So let me think. That's a good one. See, we've done a lot of things where the wise people everywhere had a consensus view that this is not the way things get done. As I mentioned about patient centricity, as I mentioned about integrated healthcare, etc., etc. And as a person, as a group, as a company, we kind of decided to believe in it and continue. And also, a lot of time, people told me that you do whatever you want, but at least in your fundraise pitches, tell them what they want to hear, and just call yourself a क्या फर्क पड़ता है, just call yourself a e-pharmacy and say the बाकी सब are pilots or whatever. Now, for whatever reason, good or bad, I always felt that what I am building makes sense and somebody will bite. And I don't think that following conventional wisdom builds anything. If everybody was knew it equally, then you would probably not be the one getting the chance to build it. And the other thing, I think one more thing I wanted to share was I have always, and I've worked with various different investors, a lot of different board members, investors, friends in the ecosystem, all well meaning people. And they all share their very well meaning and good advice that comes from their vantage point. And earlier, what I used to feel is that, yeah, they know something a lot more than probably I do. But over the period of time, I realized that, or I felt that everyone is just trying to share their thoughts, but your main job is actually to take a call based on your conviction at the end of the day, and everybody's input is worth exactly what it is. It's just an input. It's not that anyone knows much better. If they knew, they certainly would not be just advising you. They should be building out something better. So I think stick to convictions all along. And many times it has happened that nobody agrees with you. You continue to go down that path, and it's worked out fine for me. So I'm not very sure if that is a suitable example, but that is something that at least I have seen. That even if everyone in unison is saying something and you feel that's not the right thing for you, just maybe it's not the right thing for you.
No, that is a wonderful place to end. Keep learning, keep compounding patiently over the long term, and don't worry about conventional wisdom. So thank you so much, Prashant, for being on the Prime Venture Partners podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks, Amit.
Dear listeners, thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast app for free, and you'll be the first one to know when new episodes are available. Just search for Prime Venture Partners podcast in Apple Podcast, Spotify, Castbox, or however you get your podcasts. Then hit subscribe. And if you have enjoyed the show, we would be really grateful if you leave us a review on Apple Podcast. To read the full transcript, find the link in the show notes.